Welcome to the Relationship Workout for Men podcast, season 24, Navigating Emotions in Relationships. Episode 6, Be Straight, Cut the Bullshit. Today's guest is Lindsey Sherwin. She's an artist, registered drama therapist, expressive arts therapies practitioner, mental health counselor, and social entrepreneur based in New York City. And in this episode, we're going to explore how to help men communicate their needs and feelings more directly in intimate relationships. So I've been definitely looking forward to this episode because I know I need some help with this. So Lindsey, what do you think about this topic?
I love it because it's so diplomatic, so direct, so clear cut. And I think that's another big piece of, or at least a needed piece, right? Like a required piece to what we're talking about in terms of communication and expressing oneself and being aware. And so specifically for men, it's so helpful to be able to do this in such a way where they can be who they are. Like they don't have to use flowery language and come across as if they know everything and that they're, the one that has to do all the leading and taking the initiative. It's kind of like I can say what I need to say, but also feel confident and secure in who I am to allow my partner, allow my partner to take the lead. And I think that's part of cutting the bullshit, as we're saying, as I'm thinking about it, it's really, what does this mean, right? It's about really just allowing another person to absorb what we're saying and feel heard, validated, and witnessed. And I think that's really imperative and crucial to how we can be more clear and practical about what we want.
So I think most men would say they don't struggle with being straightforward. I'm not sure I agree with that when we're kind of triggered and all that stuff. But I want to touch upon, how do I do that but still come across and be compassionate towards my partner? Because if I'm straightforward with what I'm thinking, she's telling me something, I think that's a bunch of bullshit. If I say, well, that's just a bunch of bullshit, I don't think that's going to go over very well either. So how do I navigate this being straight, but in an empathetic, compassionate way that also helps, I don't want to say take care of my partner's feelings, but be aware and, not be too harsh and not be too mean. Yeah. I guess that's what how can I be straight without being mean? I guess that's what I'm asking.
Right. And I think internally, the man doesn't want to be mean. It's sort of how it's coming out because there's a lot of complex, nuanced, overlapping emotions going on around. Like think of it as like a laundry machine, right? And all the colors and clothes are spinning really fast and they're all going in one direction, and then maybe when it spins the other way they're going in another direction. And so when it doesn't mean that they all shouldn't be there, they should, because it's one unit, right? But then they get a little bit mixed up in there, and that's sort of why they're not being conveyed right, because they need to be sorted out, right? Just like laundry, it needs to be sorted out and then dried, right? So it's sort of like, as a metaphor for what I'm saying, you are harnessing and transforming I used this word before, but practical or strategic resource, if you will. And on the other side, you're also becoming balanced, you use that word, aware, balanced, and purposeful. So if you have those qualities, it's not going to come out in a condescending or sort of hard-nosed manner, right? It's going to come out in a compassionate manner because that's how you mean it to be. If we go back to acting again, I know I made a lot of analogies to acting, like meeting your objectives. What do you want in this scene? The scene is life. Life is the scene, right? So if we're coming across this messaging in terms of an acting analogy, instead of an objective, which is always needed, you always are required to have an objective. As people, we have a subconscious objective because we don't have lines. Our lines are right now, right? But as an actor, you have memorized lines that you learn, and you embody the character through those lines, and you mean them. And so you mean them in life as well. But we need to adjust the meaning as who we really are in life, because we're not playing a character, we're playing ourselves. And so if we were to allude to an acting analogy, instead of maybe the objective, you are digging into what does this mean to me? What is this feeling that's happening right now, and what does it mean? And if you can kind of think about that, and again, this part is cognitive because you're really looking at like, why am I saying these things? And if you're in the moment and you're not thinking, like it's an improvised script, as we always do with people, you're not thinking about it, you're just saying stuff, right? Like you're saying words that come out of your mouth according to how you feel. If you're aware of the feeling, then you're going to change the tone of your compassion level. So, how do people build compassion? Well, that's a whole other conversation, but like compassion is critical to developing a conscious and strong rapport. And so I think that when you say something, you have to really not only be mindful of like what you're saying, but like you have to think of like what this person, maybe you come up with a scenario in your head of like what this person has been through. Like it's so hard to teach this component. Like it's so hard to say this is how you have empathy, right? Like a lot of the role playing and seeing the perspectives and like the activities we already talked about will really help with that. But I think if we're not doing that necessarily, if somebody is like, I don't need the role playing necessarily, I just want to like think about this in a new way, perspective taking. What could that person be experiencing right now? And thinking about that. And also really asking good questions, like asking this person, like, what did you go through? And sometimes we lose sight of that because we're not worried about what they went through. We're worried about us and what we're going through right now. But like really being aware and tapping into this other side, right, of the equation, of this other person at the other end of the equation, that is my relationship, that creates my relationship with me. What did you go through today that is getting you so down? You really need to ask those questions so that person can tell you what is going on with them.
So as you were talking, it made me realize when we said the episodes be straight, cut the bullshit's actually this fight or flight fear response, which is the bullshit is just wanting to leave and saying, well, I'm out of here. That's kind of
Yeah.
bullshit, right? The bullshit is not being interested in what my partner's experience is. That's kind of bullshit. The bullshit is not really being able to be straight with how I'm feeling in the moment and call it out. And as you said earlier, not from a theoretical or whatever. It could be just as simple as I'm just really feeling frustrated right now.
Mm-hmm.
Bullshit, like I just need to call it. I don't have to say what flavor of frustration it is or anything. I just need to be straight on that. So that's what we really mean by being straight. It's like just
Yeah.
let's get to the objective of empathy. Let's get to the objective of understanding what it is that you're upset at right now, so we can cut the bullshit and move on to having more fun together, right? Because that's ultimately we're together because we want a companionship and happiness and fun. We don't want to be mired in conflict, right? So that's what I'm hearing is I did, because when the episode title, I didn't think of it that way, but that's cutting the bullshit is actually just being straight with how you're feeling. That goes all the way back to awareness, like being aware of how I'm feeling, being able to talk to my emotions. I don't have really a question there, but is that a good way of thinking about that?
Yeah, I think it's another perspective. And like just modeling what you just did is really what can benefit men when they're in their relationships, like really trying to think through things from another perspective, right? And really supporting that person. And like, I don't know if this is how you meant it, but this is what I'm hearing. And this is like a form of support to that person, right? And if that's not correct or accurate, and they're like, that's actually not what I had in mind when I brought this up, you're not reading me right, and then there's like a little bit more tension in that because they're not getting it, right? We don't always get it. You're testing the waters a lot of times when you're trying to understand somebody and their perspective, right? So being open to this forgiveness factor of like, okay, I didn't get it, and I'm sorry. You don't even have to apologize because I have my own perspectives and perceptions of like always saying sorry, right? Like that's another thing that humans do. They're always saying, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. It's like you have nothing to apologize for. It's not a sorry. It's more like that's regrettable, and unfortunately I made that assumption and I didn't mean to. I was just thinking about this for the moment, but actually I really do want to hear more. This is where I'm really trying to understand more from you. Can you tell me, and being inquisitive, can you tell me what this is about? And being conscious of forgiving yourself for that as well. Because people want to feel like you understand, or that person understands their feelings.
Right. So that's really the cutting of the bullshit, is to not show up in that way. And it kind of, when you think about it, why wouldn't you want to be that way? Like if you actually, we use the word love, if you really love this person and this person is hurting, regardless of how that person is communicating that hurt towards you, cutting the bullshit is actually caring enough to want to help this partner of mine with whatever that experience is. But you mentioned the very first episode, it's like we have to, almost many of us guys have to just start with caring about how we feel. It's like, yes, when you start at the very beginning, many men say, like, I don't really care how I feel. Like, that's the first bullshit thing you got to cut through, because you really do have to care about how you feel, because that's going to restrict your ability to go all the way back to being able to be empathetic and sit there with your partner and her hurt, even though her hurt may be caused by behavior on your side. And I think that's kind of really how I now think of cutting through the bullshit on that. Mm-hmm. I think we're going to end here. Thank you so much, Lindsey. This was just really interesting. I've learned quite a bit, and I appreciate your time, and I'm sure we'll do some more work together, but you're just lots of great insights that you shared. Thank you very much.
Thank you.